Salutations, Legion of Doom. Welcome to Podcast The Storm, where the social awkward outcasts, crazy weirdos, and all around nerds convene to talk and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co-host, the nerdy cultist, aka the Authenticator, Dalton L. Mortimer.
Good evening, everyone.
And I am your host last time on Wannabe, the Brainstormer of Pop Culture. How's everyone doing tonight?
I am doing well, in that they did not fuck up Doctor Strange 2 as nearly as bad as I thought they did. But we'll discuss that next week when Brainstormer has an actual chance to see it.
Yeah. So, kind of... Sorry. Yeah, I guess just let's get on with the first one. Hopefully this will be relatively short compared to the next one. So this one Dawn sent me. Originally from IndieWire, I believe, but we have the kind of shortened version on Yahoo News or Entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
So Elizabeth Olsen defends Marvel films, gets feisty when they're treated like a lesser type of art.
I concur with the witch on this matter.
Right. It's written by Christian Zilko, published May 8th, 2022.
I don't really have anything else to say about the title other than I agree with her on this matter. She is correct.
I will wait to give my opinion, just depending on the context, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the title might be misleading or whatever, but based on the normally based on the title, I already have things to say. But this time, if the title is accurate, then I agree with her. So yeah.
Right. Okay. These days, everyone has an opinion about Marvel's impact on the film industry. Directors from Martin Scorsese to Francis Ford Coppola have their opinions about how Marvel's massive cinematic universe is taking up too much oxygen that could have gone to more creative filmmakers. Meanwhile, Marvel actors, a group which encompasses much of Hollywood's A-list at this point, weigh in to defend the franchise.
As well they should, given that A, it's their job, and B, they make good shit. Sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. The latest Marvel star to vouch for the studio is WandaVision and Doctor Strange star Elizabeth Olsen. In a new interview with The Independent, Olsen expressed her belief that the franchise receives too much criticism. I mean, overall, I don't disagree. Granted, I do think some criticism is warranted, but...
Yeah, but she's not saying there's no valid criticism. She's saying there's too much... And this might be me interpreting her slightly, but there's too much unnecessary, like, schadenfreude and whining. Whenever Marvel makes even the slightest stumbling block, everyone is baying for blood. And when they aren't making mistakes, people are like, why won't Marvel make enough mistakes so that this genre can die already?
Right. Um. Yeah. 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 Okay. That's pretty fair. Um. Yeah. I don't really have anything else to say to that. So moving on.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm not saying we're making indie art films, but I just think it takes away from our crew, which bugs me. Wilson said. These are some of the most amazing set designers, costume designers, camera operators. I feel this diminishing them with that kind of criticism takes away from all the people who do award-winning films that also work on these projects. Okay,
Yeah. I
that's a good point, and kudos for actually giving props to the crew because most people don't do that.
Well, there's that, and there's also the fact of I'm sure she includes herself and her co-stars in that list too, but good for her for not opening with that.
Yeah. Um, and yeah, like okay, this is gonna be weird, but like movies like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Thor Ragnarok, as much as I more so hate the
As much as you have problems with it, you can't deny that it's doing something interesting.
yeah, it has a lot. It's very like the style of it, the very visuals of it are very unique,
Hmm.
very artistic. Um,
Hmm.
and my major criticism with Thor Ragnarok, which I don't think I've ever really said, is more so to do with the writing. I think.
Yeah, probably something to do with the fact that they undercut all the serious shit by jokes. Cough, cough.
And like
Korg making jokes as Asgard literally burns.
okay, that's kind of a Marvel thing overall, usually, but it just felt like super overt in Thor Ragnarok.
Hmm.
Sorry, it's besides the point. And um, there's also like a variety. Like they are superhero movies that have a lot of action into the and stuff, but like you look at each individual film, there is a uniqueness to each one.
Yeah, it's a genre. Saying that every superhero movie is the freaking same, it's like saying every Western movie is the freaking same, or every horror movie is the freaking same, or every romantic comedy movie is the freaking same.
Right.
Yes, there are obvious conventions that they all have in common, and obvious like plot elements that they all have in common because they're the same freaking genre. But apart from being the same freaking genre, a movie like um Zack Snyder's Justice League is completely different from Suicide Squad 2, or a movie like um Winter Soldier is completely different from Guardians of the Galaxy, which is why I consider 2014 to be the most impressive year for Marvel so far because those those two movies that are on the complete opposite end of the comic book movie spectrum are within like a couple months of each other that they came out. So yeah, saying that they're all the same is fine, I guess, if you want to ignore all the ways that each one is different. Moving on though. Sorry. Unless he left to go get pizza, I'm assuming. Or did I glitch out? Hmm. Let's see. Has the chat shown up yet? Chat has not shown up yet. Um, hmm. Brainstorming.
Yeah. Sorry, disappeared for a sec.
Okay. Glad I didn't like disappear, because sometimes when it lags too much, it drops me, and then I get halfway through a rant and realize, oh wait, shit, nobody heard that. God damn it.
Yeah. Um. Right, and it's weird. Like I was watching a video about Ethan Hawke, who recently played Richard Harrow on Moon Knight, where he talked about like superhero films. Not recently, like a couple years ago, like a clip from this thing, like an interview he was part of, and it's kind of, and I kind of agree with it. Like there are movies out there that are made to be, like I'm kind of obviously referencing superhero movies here. There are superhero movies or comic book movies that are made solely to be a product, you know, to to get money. And there are ones that where people put their heart, soul, blood, sweat, and tears into, and you can feel that. And that can be said about any genre of movie out there.
Yeah, and it probably should be, which is why when people get all bloodthirsty with regards to the end of the superhero genre, I'm like, so when are we gonna set our sights on the fact that in any given January of any given year there will be no less than 6 bad horror movies? Or when are we gonna set our sights on the fact that every February there's at least 3 bad romantic comedies? You don't care about those things. How strange. It's almost like you feel an unnecessary hatred for the genre that is currently saving Hollywood's bacon for some reason. And I do actually want to go back to something that Elizabeth Olsen said here when she opened with, I'm not saying we're making art films. To that, Ms. Olsen, I would say good, because most art films in this day and age are shit and nobody actually wants to watch them. And that, if you'll pardon my my digression here, I think is a more substantive problem. Not the fact that the movies people want to see aren't any good, quote unquote, but the issue that the movies that are good, quote unquote, are unwatchably pretentious pieces of shit with no ambition whatsoever. Why is it that you can only be ambitious in small movies with no fucking budget and no interesting concepts? Not because you can't do interesting concepts on a smaller budget. They do that on TV all the fucking time. Look at Sci-Fi's The Magicians or The Expanse or um, Altered Carbon or any like most of the better like Netflix stuff. Hopefully Sandman, although I'm not holding my breath on that one. Like you can do interesting conceptual things on a budget, but people don't not because they don't, not because they can't, but because they get so hung up on their own ego, their own like approach to art, this like art as a means to a socio-cultural or political end shit, and they don't bother to think, gee, surely a good movie would also be one that people would actually want to watch, you would think. It's why back in the old days of the Oscars, they had 2 equivalents to Best Picture. It was something like um, most outstanding achievement in film and most outstanding like technical achievement or something along those lines. And frankly, my issue is those 2 things shouldn't be separate. You should be putting in the effort of the art house into the blockbusters that everyone wants to see. If your ideas are so shitty that you can't convince anyone to willingly consume them, and then you have to write all these hit pieces about how you um hate the masses because they have no taste and they don't want to sit through pretentious art house pieces, then either stop whining and understand that your standards are different than everyone else's standards, or there is another option. you could make art house movies that people actually want to see. And then once you make movies that people will want to see, they'll want to see them, and they will see them, and then your art house movie will make money. The problem is that I shouldn't direct this at the royal you, because not everyone who makes art house movies does this, but a large part of film intelligentsia and the powers that be in Hollywood believe that to be artistically valid, it has to not please the audience. It has to piss off the audience. It has to be incoherent and experimental and artsy in all the wrong ways. Not in the pushing conceptual or visual boundaries, not in creating new kinds of film technology, not in any of those ways, not in telling a story that has more complexity than otherwise, but in the it has to be like abstractly and thematically deconstructive in such a way that will piss off the average viewer. Well, if you're making movies specifically to piss off the average viewer and that's what you consider to be art, you're free to have that supposition, but then don't be mad when no one wants to come and see your movie, because people don't generally like being pissed off by the art they consume, you see. People would rather be captivated by the art they consume, or intrigued by the art they consume, or invested in the art they consume. And they don't like it when art is used as a means to an end rather than an end in itself, generally speaking. And that's the other thing. Dear Hollywood, nobody gives a fuck about themes. Nobody will. Nobody ever has. The only time when people can be persuaded to care about themes is when those themes are organic to the story and organic to the lives of the characters. If you can't manage that, if you have to crowbar in the themes with so much, rhetorical jiggery pokery that it would make a philosopher's head spin, then you have failed, because the themes and the external implications of the art are less important than the world created by the piece, the characters that exist within that piece, and the three-dimensionalness of both of the above combining into a story that makes logically coherent sense. That's why the MCU does better than you, because the MCU is more concerned with, we make a world, we put some interesting characters in that interesting world, and then we simply let them play out. And the couple of times the MCU has stumbled, like with Eternals, is when they either don't have enough faith in the three-dimensionalness of those things to go to the next level, or when they cave to the artistic pressure of the old guard film press and the film intelligentsia and try to crowbar themes of their own into the movie. Cough, cough, Captain Marvel, cough, cough, Eternals.
Dom.
Yeah, go ahead.
Ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Olsen understands that Marvel makes a certain type of movie for a broad audience, but believes that should not take away from the craftsmanship that goes into the films. From an actor's point of view, whatever I get, I totally understand that there's a different kind of performance that's happening. But I do think throwing Marvel under the bus takes away from the hundreds of very talented crew people. That's where I get a little feisty about that.
Yeah, and again, I concur with the witch on this matter.
Okay. Olsen says that she was only supposed to appear in 3 Marvel movies when she was first cast in the role. I did not know that.
Yeah, her original contract was only for 3 movies.
So I assume Age of Ultron, Civil War, and Infinity War?
I assume so.
Interesting. All right. Olsen says that she was only supposed to appear. Sorry, I read that. I only signed on to do a couple movies, so it continues to be a surprise when they want to use me for more projects, she said. I've been confused by how lucky I got with them wanting to make WandaVision. Olsen added that she sees no end in sight for her Marvel journey and is willing to keep making Marvel movies and shows for as long as the quality remains at its current level.
Good for you, Elizabeth. Good for you indeed.
Yeah.
And if it's any consolation, I think you're a better actress than your sisters.
Oh, right. Her sisters are the Olsen twins.
Yes.
I never put that together.
I know you didn't. I remember the last time I brought this up, I had to explain it. But that's because
Okay,
that's because there's a 4-year gap between us, and the Olsen twins weren't the omnipresent fixture in your childhood that they were in mine.
Yeah, so I was aware of them, kind of. It's just I didn't, you know.
But yeah, Elizabeth, if it's any consolation in one humble nerd's opinion, um, Mary Kate and Ashley might have gotten the clout back in the day, but you got the talent, sweetheart.
Right.
I hope she takes that in a positive way if she ever watches this and doesn't think I'm creepy or anything, but I know in many previous interviews she said how she felt overshadowed by her sisters, so that was my that was my attempt to give her a compliment that would mean something to her personally, but it probably fell flat. Still true though. Moving on.
Right, I guess it's the last of the article. I don't know how big the plans actually are, but I'm down for anything as long as there's a good idea attached to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, that's kind of like I feel like a lot of actors or people who work on in the film industry should act and work.
This should be a default attitude, but unfortunately it is not. Unfortunately, we now live in a time where it's more common to see contempt for the fan base and contempt for having to do uh films that will please the audience. Derp. Yeah. Moving on.
You're gonna have to give me a few minutes because
Yeah,
the
you've got to find out where we stopped last time.
yeah. Also, it's a big article and it's gonna take a while to load.
Yeah. But for those that don't know, um, what this signifies, it's time for us to go after our personal white whale again. In other words, it's the rewriting Ripley Star Wars article. Oh ye gods. Abandon hope, all ye who enter here.
All right. So our last one was 149.
It's been a minute since we've done this.
Yeah. Okay.
We're in what, the mid 160s now?
164.
Yeah. Oh shit.
Yeah, sorry, this is just—it's a really long article.
Yes, that's why we've been picking at it by like hour-long segments each
Right.
couple of podcasts when we don't have anything better to do.
Yeah. God, I think I overshot it by accident, and now I'm just trying to figure out what the fuck. Okay.
Imagine how good it will feel when we finally get done with this. When we actually get done with this, I'm freaking popping champagne or something.
Right. Yeah. God damn it. I really hate these types of articles, man. I really do.
Yeah, the guy wrote a conspiracy theory document in the style of a college dissertation. And it shows in the worst aspects of both of the above.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. Fuck's sake. Sorry, it's just this so damn long.
Yeah, it's the length of a college dissertation, but with all the coherency of that one conspiracy theory nut character in a Roland Emmerich or Michael Bay movie. Complete with their freaking um red thread charts that randomly connect dots that seem unconnected at first glance. And he actually has to explain to you all the little connections. Which means that anyone trying to unravel said spider's web chart of Wu has to untangle all of those threads. Most of which make no fucking sense at all as per the frankly schizophrenic level of cognition here. But such is life, and I've never given in on anything before in my life, and I'm not about to start now.
Yeah. Okay.
Somebody has to make it all the way through this goddamn thing, and we will. Even if it takes us another 5 years.
Oh God, no.
Like I said, when we actually get to the end of this, I am popping champagne
I might
because
actually.
it will feel like a freaking. It will feel like we just climbed Mount Everest when we get done, I think.
All right. Okay. So I think I found the place where we're at.
Okay.
Uh, I unfortunately don't want to read. Well, yeah, we're going to start off where we were supposed to go, where we stopped.
Hmm.
Okay, so this is the Rewriting Ripley article, in plain sight, how white supremacy, misogyny, and hatred ruined the Last Jedi. I think it was how hate. Okay, in plain sight, how white supremacy, misogyny, and hate targeted the Star Wars sequel trilogy.
And one.
And one.
And short version response is no, they didn't. You are fucking clinically insane. But the long version is contained within a playlist that we're about halfway through at this point.
I think we got about like a quarter or so left.
Oh, are we further along than I thought we were? Cool.
Yeah, yeah,
Yay.
yeah. Looks like about a quarter left. Though knowing that it's going to take us a while to get through that.
I mean, we've devoted an hour's worth of time in like 10 different shows to this thing, and we're
12.
still
12 right now.
yeah. So we've devoted literally 12 hours to unraveling this thing so far, and we are not yet at the end.
Actually,
And by the way, there is an entire playlist on the Podcast of the Storm channel
which
that is titled "Rewriting Ripley" article
which
playlist, and
which will be updated tomorrow.
yeah. And if you want to see our responses to every painstaking goddamn part of this article, start there.
Right. And full warning, more than likely we've repeated things constantly just because this article just also does that.
It repeats the same stupid things over and over again, or bases its stupid contentions on its previous stupid contentions. So very often, to get to the root of the problem, you have to repeat yourself over and over because the obvious rebuttal is still not being taken into account.
Right. All right. Okay. So, okay. So I'll read the sentence prior, just so like we have some context.
Right.
Okay. So Thompson identifies anybody who believes in maintaining white culture as Americans, much like Ichibaka calls alt-right fans crusading against the supposed hatred of the white Christian male customers, in air quotes.
The alt-right does not mean what you think it means and never has. The alt-right practically, for all intents and purposes, does not exist, given that there are maybe 3 alt-righters that I can think of off the top of my head. One of them being Richard Spencer, another of them being a guy by the name of Francois Gariepy, or J.F. Gariepy, more commonly, and I think a guy by the name of Edgy Spinks, but or who goes by the handle Edgy Spinks, but I don't remember. You might have a case for Nick Fuentes being slightly alt-right adjacent now, but he only recently, to my knowledge, became that way. Dude has gone well and truly into the Alex Jones style conspiracy theory rabbit hole and not come up for air. But I don't even know how long Nick Fuentes has been like that, because for the most part, I didn't even know Nick Fuentes was a thing until recently. So there's that. Moving on, though.
Right. Okay. This is why we must take these people seriously. Underneath almost every angry YouTuber who can be dismissed as a troll or a disgruntled nerd, there is a powerful system of hate and oppression that resides at the core of the most racist institutions in the United States.
Yes, and that oppression is coming from an ideology known as social justice, good sir. Just like back in the 90s and before the 90s, it was coming from evangelical family values traditionalists. Unfortunately for you, the really bad, no good patriarchy of yet Christian patriarchy of yesteryear, like the freaking school council in Dead Poet Society or the doctor's certification board in Patch Adams, got defeated in the 90s, as well it should have. And now you people, you believers in the ideology known as social justice, are the moral zeitgeist of the upper classes and the ones in current control of the cultural Overton window. And you are being exactly as authoritarian as the evangelical tradcon firebrand preachers of yesteryear, just on the other side. I know you don't want to believe that, but that doesn't make it any less true. Moving on.
The hate against the Last Jedi is yet another way vitriolic backlash against non-white culture was pushed into the mainstream and allowed to radicalize teens and young men and women on one of the biggest social media platforms on the internet.
Okay, interesting thing about the term radicalization here, because the people on the front lines of places like Antifa and BLM actually willingly refer to themselves as radicals, but they never get called radicalized in any meaningful way, even though they will self-identify as radicals, and many of them operate knowingly and willfully, and will self-admit to the fact that they operate under the terms of Saul Alinsky's famous book, Rules for Radicals. But they are never referred to as radicals, even when they self-identify as such and are proud of it. And yet, people like us oppose the moral authoritarianism of modern day social justice, just like we oppose the tradcon evangelicals of yesteryear. And we get called radicals, even though we don't self-identify as radicals. It's fucking funny how that works. If you're so worried about radicalization, you might want to start with the people who will proudly and self-avowedly identify as radicals, unironically, and will then proceed to do radical shit like burning things to the ground and causing arson and doxing and all the other fucked up things that modern day activists tend to enjoy doing. Moving on though.
Right, okay. And this hate has only allowed it to spread until it was accepted as the truth.
No. No, it is not. You are not accepting it as the truth, and you have a massive platform to say that it is not the truth with your conspiratorial dissertation of woo. But as it happens, it's not motivated by hate. The fact that it is motivated by hate is a fabrication of your own mind and your own principle, your own framework, because you attribute the motivation of hatred to people who do not hold it, generally speaking. There are some people, minuscule though the John Francois Gary P's and Richard Spencer's and arguably Nick Fuentes's might be, there are some people who you could genuinely maybe class as being hateful. If you tried really, really hard and were the least charitable you could be to them. But you cannot be that uncharitable to somebody like a Geeks and Gamers or an EVS, as much as I fucking hate EVS's guts. Despite the fact that I hate his guts, I will defend to the death his right to say the things he says, and I will defend him from the crimes that he's being accused of, as and when those crimes are not true. If you want to call him a useless movement co-opting blowhard who thinks he's the king of everything just because he got some people on his side once, I wouldn't argue with you. But you call people like Geeks and Gamers, Odin's Movie Blog, and EVS alt-right, and they categorically are not, and you call them radicals when they categorically are not, and you accuse them of being motivated by hatred when, for the most part, they categorically are not. So you are once again misusing terms, and you are doing so in a mechanism in order to invalidate them, much like with the term radicalization, as I mentioned earlier. You only apply it to people that you consider to be radical, not to people who actually will knowingly and willfully admit to radicalizing people, or people who will self-identify as radicals, i.e., the social justice types found in places like Antifa and BLM will self-avowedly admit to being radicals and admit to using the tactics of radicals espoused in Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, but you won't call them radicals because they're in the appropriate moral framework, according to you. They're inside the moral Overton window. But people who don't and never have identified as radicals or can in any way be shown to radicalize anyone, you get to call them radicals because you're not using radicalization as a term of function or of specificity. You're using it as a term of authoritative invalidation, i.e., You're not attacking the substance of the argument. You're not attacking the people who make these claims on grounds that they could actually be held to. You're attacking them on arbitrary moral grounds so as to invalidate them. And you're strawmanning their motivations because you would rather fight an enemy solely motivated by hate, because that makes you automatically the good guy. But the sad fact of the matter is, no matter how much you want to paint the Geeks and Gamers types as the tradcon evangelicals of yesteryear come back even harder and more radical, they are not. Yes, there are Christians amongst the anti-SJW community, but there are also non-Christians. Hi. And there are also middling Christians who don't really give a fuck one way or the other.
Yo.
And as far as traditionalism or traditional conservatism goes, I will borrow a line actually from Antifa in this case and say they get the bullet too, as far as I'm concerned. I would rather live in a world where nobody has the moral whip hand or the moral ban hammer. I.e., no Helen Lovejoy is screaming, "Won't somebody please think of the children?" And no Karens actually trying to willingly convert the children to their ideology, as per that one song sung by the choir in Los Angeles in that one video. But that's just my bag. I would prefer a world in which neither side of the political spectrum or the ideological spectrum, or whatever you want to call it, had the moral whip hand and moral justification to be authoritarian pricks. I prefer the loosely classical liberal stroke lowercase l or uppercase L libertarian approach of everyone is an individual, everyone does what they do as long as they're not hurting anybody, and we all just get the fuck along. And when arguments occur, those arguments are to be countered not by invalidating each other or validating each other, because validity is a nonsensical abstraction anyway, but by simple logical argumentation. But apparently, that position makes me horrifyingly radical. Derp. Moving on.
Right. Okay. How far right hate turns into fact. So before you let me.
Yes, go.
Because that was just the title.
Mm-hmm.
So how did a small concentrated group on YouTube become representative of the entire population of people who ever saw The Last Jedi? There are several ways this happened, and they include: 1, an alarming media culture that puts profits over facts; 2, the use of socks, bots, and super users; 3, hashtags and boycotts; and 4, a lack of education about how to navigate online spaces, especially those under political attack. Okay, go.
Okay. First of all, thank you for not saying the alt-right again, because you clearly have no idea what that word means. Thank you for at least saying far-right. But here's the thing. Again, the anti-SJW sphere is not entirely comprised of people who are right-wing. I am left-wing. I voted for Bernie Sanders twice, and my second and third choices were Tulsi Gabbard and Andrew Yang. In the most recent side of things. I once upon a time put Elizabeth Warren on that list until Elizabeth Warren showed herself to be an unprincipled profiteering dickhead, and therefore she is no longer on the list. And also she's kind of an embarrassing bitch, but that's neither here nor there. But the reason why this small group of YouTubers became the voice of large swaths of the fan base is because when you upload videos onto YouTube, people watch, what they want to watch, and they support people who resonate with them in some sense. And it's because the sentiment on the ground was much closer to a um Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers approach, even though he is a bit of a standoffish prick, than it was the Bob Chipman approach of the Last Jedi is so great because it actively alienates the fans and subverts expectations. Or the film intelligentsia approach. You see, this is once again kind of a class issue, and you should understand those considering the position you're arguing from, generally speaking. But the people on the ground disagree with you ideologically. The people in the aristocracy tend to agree with you ideologically. But just because the aristocracy have all collectively agreed to something, i.e., the moral framework of modern day social justice, doesn't mean that it is either correct or beyond criticism. And the plebs think differently. And the reason why these YouTubers became successful is because they found that the things they were saying resonated with enough people that they became popular. Because the people in question were either slightly better at articulating what was wrong with the thing, and therefore people gravitated towards it so that their opinions could be expressed in a more coherent and more succinct way, or the personalities in question were likable enough and stylish enough that when they said the same things that those fans were thinking, they grabbed onto that person as a exemplar of why The Last Jedi, for example, was terrible. Because it was. Moving on.
Right. Okay. Sorry, give me a sec. Something in my eye.
Hmm.
Something in my eye. One sec. Okay. Okay. The danger of clickbait headlines. That's funny. And
You might want to express this sentiment to, oh, I don't know, every single BuzzFeed article ever, or every single Guardian article ever, or every single Mary Sue article ever. Because I hate to break it to you, but if you're looking for clickbait, my friend, you're not just gonna find it on the anti-SJW side. Jezebel and Mel Magazine would have some tithes to pay on that one as well. A large part of what Six Hexenhammer calls the missing link media, i.e., the media that's trying to be both a terrestrial outlet and also an online presence, does clickbait. And it's not even just in the political sphere or ideological sphere of YouTube that people use clickbait headlines. If you look at literally every top 5 scary videos video ever made, their titles are also clickbait. Or SCP titles also clickbait. Or like literally every major subgenre on YouTube has a certain percentage of it that deals mostly with clickbait. Because that's just how the internet works. God damn it. Moving on.
Pop culture entertainment journalism, in particular, is rife with sensationalist headlines that have nothing to do with what the audience actually thought about a particular group of media. The most infamous culprits of this pop culture sites like Screen Rant and Comic Book Resources, both owned by Valnet, a company that doesn't produce journalistic integrity, but instead produces clicks.
Okay, I will give this one to you. You actually are attacking what is ostensibly your own side here. I will give that to you entirely. That's literally what I was thinking. I bet you're gonna blame like Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers or someone like that instead of blaming Comic Book Resources. But
That's fairly.
yep, yeah, that's fine. That is the first coherent thing that you have said in 12 hours worth of covering this article.
Actually, I think the first time we spent like 2 or so hours on it.
Yeah, it's closer to 14. So yeah, 14 or 15 hours. But yeah, in the 15 hours or so that we've been covering this article, that is the first unarguably correct thing you've said. Well done, sir. And again, thank you for attacking your own side ostensibly on this one. But that doesn't mean that the Geeks and Gamers or anti-SJW side of pop culture coverage is any worse than something like CBR or, God forbid, Bleeding Cool. And no, I still haven't forgiven you, Rich. Fuck off. Moving on.
Right. Okay. Respectable outlets for pop culture journalism are seemingly changing their strategies to keep up with the damage companies like Valnet have done to the industry.
Again, couldn't agree more. They do damage the industry, but I really don't think you want to have a conversation as to how they damage the industry. Because how they damage the industry is by catering to the hipster audience, i.e., the audience that doesn't really care um, about geek pop culture outside of the movies, and also the social justice ideologues who like to cram social justice into every kind of art they make, or every kind of art they co-opt and then proceed to try and make and then fail miserably. Um, but again, thank you for once again at least calling out your side on this one, because I've seen many, many pro social justice articles in CBR that are honestly even more clickbaity than usual CBR articles. The ones that are just sort of Wikipedia articles that just recap basic information about characters or appearances and stuff in comics aren't that bad. It's the ideologically or editorially the opinion pieces, the op-eds that really do the clickbait more than anything else. Moving on.
Yeah. Okay. For example, coverage on the season finale of WandaVision from the Washington Post and the Hollywood Reporter gave time to disappointment from very online pockets of fans who were upset their theories were not included in the finale. Hollywood Reporter's review claims that the episode divided fans, which implies the finale currently sitting at 8.6 at an 8.6 rating on IMDb, was somehow polarizing. Okay,
Because okay, you go first.
well, I was gonna say just because it has a high rating doesn't mean that it didn't polarize people. And also, I don't. I think a rating on a site like IMDb isn't really telling of the actual.
Well, there's that, and there's the fact that those sorts of aggregators can be manipulated algorithmically.
Yeah,
But you're doing this again. I can't believe you're doing this again. He's doing the but the right people like it, therefore it's not divisive argument. Okay, once again for the record, and I can't believe I have to literally repeat this of all rants, but if there are two sides in contention over something, if those sides are large enough, vocal enough, and invested enough, if there are multiple sides actually being divided on a thing, it is categorically divisive, whether you like it or not. You are no more justified in removing the genuine fans, i.e., the people who are invested in comic book lore, not liking WandaVision, than I would be to say that just because the comic book fans liked it or didn't like it doesn't mean that there aren't, you know, um, Mary Sue contributors that liked it or whatever. Even though even though I don't agree with the Mary Sue types or the soccer mom Johnny Come Lately hipster I love the science types, um, or those sorts of people. And I do think that comic book media should actually cater to its main fan base rather than trying to alienate its own fan base on the behalf of normies. Even though I do dislike that, my dislike of those people doesn't make them invalid people. Okay? Even your opposition in a war is still fighting that war. I.e., just because you don't like the people fighting you in a war doesn't mean that a war is not happening. You don't get to say, this isn't a war, this is an occupation, because only valid people can fight in a war. That's effectively what you're doing there. It's these people are invalid, therefore they don't get a actual position on this issue. Well, okay, even a stupid person can have an opinion on a thing, even if they were hateful and stupid and bigoted and derpity, like all the things you've accused them of being, which most of them are not. Most of them are just genuine nerds who are annoyed that WandaVision set up a bunch of shit that it didn't pay off and actually pissed all over the intelligence of those people by not just refusing to acknowledge any of those better alternative endings, but also by insulting them by making a inappropriate sexual joke out of all their speculation. Thank you, Ralph Boner. You don't get to say that that they don't have an ability to maintain a part in the discussion and therefore make a thing divisive, even if you don't like a person, that doesn't prevent them from holding a position. And if they're holding a position contrary to the position that you like, then that is what we call divisive, because divisive isn't supposed to be used as an invalidating thing. Divisive doesn't mean invalid. Divisive means there are multiple positions on this thing, i.e., opinions, right, are divided, hence divisiveness. This is a very simple linguistic thing I'm doing, because the word divide and divisive come from the same goddamn root word, you see. If two sides are divided on something, then that thing is by definition divisive. What you're doing that's pissing me off so much is you're assuming that divisiveness is just a code word for invalid. Which, thank you for showing your hand and showing that that is exactly how most modern day intellectuals and journalists use that word. They don't mean the actual definition of the word divisive, i.e., there are two sides opposed to this. They mean something about this is invalid when they use the word divisive. But just because that's how you use a word doesn't mean you can just change the definition when you feel like it, dear. And just because you rhetorically and ideologically invalidate a group doesn't mean they aren't part of the discussion. When you block someone from social media, that doesn't mean they're blocked from all reality. Deal with it. Moving on.
Right. All right. When the reality is, these fans, in air quotes, are just a few thousand entitled nerds, and in the case of WandaVision, these are mostly just entitled nerds who do not represent the fan population of a multi-billion-dollar franchise.
Okay. First of all, you don't get to define what a fan is any more than I do, because people like things for different reasons. Therefore, they're a fan of things for different reasons, and the way they get there isn't the important thing. The thing is that they get there. But yes, things that are based heavily on nerd culture, get this, or should be trying to appeal to nerds, because, nerds are to be found in the vicinity of nerd culture. And you can't okay, I can't believe you actually just did this. You just said these nerds want to have an opinion on nerd culture. How dare they? You tried to invalidate a group of fans of comic books and comic book based media by calling them nerds. How do you do that? It's like trying to invalidate the readers of Twilight and 50 Shades of Grey by calling them women. Do you see how moronic that sounds? Yes, it's a female romance story that they're reading. Obviously, the majority of them would be women. This isn't controversial, and it's a nerdy thing they're consuming. Therefore, calling them nerds in a manner to invalidate them A means that you think nerd is a bad thing, which it is not. Fuck you. And B, it's like saying all of these cowboys actually like movies that feature cowboys. How can this be? You know, it's like walking up to a guy in a ranch owner in Texas and going, "How dare you like John Wayne movies, you stupid cowboy?" That's the level of stupid you just did, and you did it in a puerile attempt to basically use playground name calling in an academic article as though it's actually an argument all of a sudden. You're literally just calling people names in a way to invalidate them. But here's the thing: most genuine nerds don't have any problem with the fucking nerd term. We realized a long time ago that what that term means is passionate, eccentric, intellectual with niche interests. And there is nothing wrong with any of those things. It means being invested in things like lore, in characters, in storytelling, in new or unorthodox kinds of art. That's what nerd means. And the only reason that term has a connotation of invalidness or wrongness is because some territorial thick-necked jocks from yesteryear think that it's stupid to be smart, or stupid to be passionate, or stupid to be engaged in the things you actually enjoy. And the correct answer to you is the same correct answer to all the people who say geek or nerd like it's a bad word. Yes, I am that. Just like if I were a different race and somebody used a negative word in relation to that race that had no substantive negative connotations, just contextual ones, I would be saying, yes, of course. Like, saying it's bad to be a nerd is tantamount to saying it's bad to be gay. It's like when somebody says to a gay person, "Oh, that's gay." The correct response is not, "Don't call me that," or "Don't call that thing that." The correct answer is, "Yes, I have no problem with this because that's what I am and there's nothing wrong with it." Moron. Moving on.
Right. Okay. Da, 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 the same tactic happened to The Last Jedi, where coverage fervently claimed that the film was unexpectedly polarizing, hated, and divisive. While the articles themselves are typically quick to the point out that the backlash is from a minority of fans, the majority of people only read headlines.
Okay, so are you saying that minorities are all of a sudden invalid now?
No,
It'd be really.
minority is an air quote. Like minority.
No, I know, but it's really fucking funny to hear someone in favor of social justice all of a sudden say that something being a minority invalidates it, considering that's the exact mirror fucking opposite of every other aspect of their worldview. But it's the wrong kind of minority, you see. All of a sudden, if it's a minority we don't like, then minority is a bad thing to call somebody. Derp. That is the fundamental, or one of the fundamental issues a lot of people have with social justice, is how quickly it will become mirror image hypocritical to get whatever point across they want to get across. I.e., in every other context under the sun, social justice uses minority interchangeably with saint. But when it's a minority you don't like, all of a sudden minority is a bad word to call something. Fucking hilarious how that works. Moving on now.
Right. Okay. Socks, bots, and super users. In October 2018, several publications reported that 50% of hate against The Last Jedi was the result of Russian trolls. These headlines were misleading. Trolls and bots have played a part in hate against The Last Jedi, likely as much as trolls and bots played a role in anything making rounds in the Twitterverse. It is true, however, that bots did have an impact on hate spread to individuals involved with The Last Jedi, including director Rian Johnson.
Okay. But there are literal. Okay. How exactly is that relevant to anything then? If we're not talking about people doing a thing, then what does it matter? If we're talking about people creating bots like that, then you should focus on the people who actually make the bots, because bots are basically the bacteria of the internet, i.e., there's millions upon millions of them in every metaphorical square inch of the internet, and nobody even notices them most of the time. Bots and spam and like AI troll programs are a dime a dozen, and they're not relevant to anything. They're not relevant to the hate against the Last Jedi any more than they're relevant against, oh, I don't know, people's hatred of. I can't even begin to think of something that I've seen trolls like or bots use um to it. It's no more relevant to that than it is relevant to those annoying those annoying chain letter emails that people send for some reason. But unless you're going to claim that more bots are to be found within this community, in which case objection relevance question mark. And if you're just going to mislabel actual accounts as bots because you feel like it, then that's just a way of minimizing your opposition, making it seem like your opposition is smaller than it is because you don't want to deal with the fact that you guys are the aristocrats and the rest of us are the plebs. So be it. Moving on.
Right. Okay. Morton Bay, a research fellow at the University of Southern California, analyzed replies to tweets made by Johnson. Bay concluded that 50% of negative tweets towards Johnson were bots, trolls, or sock puppets that were likely used for political purposes.
Okay. One, stock accounts might just mean a spare account that somebody has for something. Trolls usually just means person who is being contentious, either in a good way or a bad way. So troll actually does usually tend to mean real person doing a thing. So you can't just shove everyone who disagrees with you in the troll box, because that just means a person that disagrees with me outside of the parameters that I've set up to disagree with me, derp. And sock accounts usually just mean a spare anonymous account that people use because they don't want to get caught doing something. As for bots, again, bots are the bacteria of the internet. There are so many of those goddamn things, and they stupidly replicate each other just like bacteria. And they're no more relevant here than they would be anywhere the fuck else. Moving on.
Right. All right. While bots and socks can play a part in political attacks, it is important to realize that the hate is mostly homegrown and carried out by real hateful individuals.
Okay, I will agree with part of that in the sense that yes, there are real people who disagree with you. Where you fall down once again is that they are not in in most cases motivated by any kind of hate whatsoever, other than a hate for the art in question, because it is bad. And you get to criticize artists. I don't know where this obvious piece of information that I'm going to lay out here it became not obvious, but artists can be criticized just like literally anyone else on whatever grounds are relevant to the discussion. So you don't get to say, oh, your disagreement isn't correct disagreement because you're just a troll. No. If someone disagrees with you on whatever metric they feel like disagreeing with you on, the correct answer is to argue back and to dismantle their argument if you can, and to acquiesce and fix the problem if not. But you don't want to do either of those things. So instead of doing either of those sensible things, of defending yourself with argumentation, or B, fixing the problem so people don't hate you anymore, you just say they're invalid. And around we go, because the more invalid these people get called, the more annoyed they get because, well, let's be honest, nobody wants to be called an invalid person just because they have a contrary opinion to someone. And yet that's exactly what you do all the goddamn time. Moving on.
In a study by University of Rochester, Professor Bethany Lacina, an analysis of tweets from Star Wars fans concluded that a conversation about Star Wars fans on Twitter was increasingly abusive and harmful when talking about marginalized groups. She concludes that this hate mostly came from real people and not from bots.
Okay. Are you ever going to do anything to address these real people? Or are you not? First of all. Second of all, um, how are you defining hate once again? Because you never define what you mean by that word. You just assume that it is the overarching cause, and you have yet to demonstrate that in any way other than your own conjecture. You you have you have yet to substantiate any meaningful examples of hate. All you've done is conflate everyone who disagrees with you with hate, thereby invalidating them. It it's known as the fallacy of guilt by association or fallacy of association, i.e., you associate their motives with hate, and then you don't have to deal with them. But you have yet to actually demonstrate any examples of hate that would satisfy anyone's objections. And the more people try to explain to you that they're not hateful, the more hateful you call them usually. So it becomes a piece of circular logic whereby the more you protest against me calling you a hateful, bigoted person, the more hateful and bigoted you are, don't you know? It isn't that fortunate for you, person who's arguing for hatred and never substantiating anything. The burden is on you to prove that hate exists, not for the person who is allegedly doing what you call hate. Stop hating. Because you actually have to prove that someone is motivated by hatred in order to claim that people are motivated by hatred rather than just assuming it from some abstract ideological framework. Moving on.
Right. All right. Dan Morrell of popular YouTube channel Honest Trailer noted on Twitter that he's never seen a response like the response he got on their Honest Trailer for The Last Jedi. He mentions that over 15,000 comments were flagged for being aggressive or abusive. These comments were likely real people. Okay.
Okay, well, how were his what were his measures for abuse or aggression? Because it might have just been, fuck this movie sucks, this movie ruined Star Wars for me. If that's what if that's what you consider abusive and hateful, I'd be amazed how you actually endeavor to disagree with anyone when you think they're wrong, other than just calling them invalid. Actually, that probably is your go-to approach to arguments. You don't actually argue anything. You just argue that the person who made the argument is invalid somehow, which of course is a fallacy known as ad hominem, generally speaking. So again, for a research analyst who writes like a philosophical academic, you don't appear to know how basic math or basic philosophy work very well at all. Moving on.
Right. All right. Hashtags and boycotts. Boycotts in air quotes. Another popular method for how hate is made to look bigger than it actually is the use of hashtags and boycotts in air quotes. These
You
tags are
realize
usually,
go ahead, sorry.
these tags are usually pushed by a small but dedicated group of users.
If they're large enough to sustain these sort of hashtags, then that implies that they're not small. Because you do realize that social media isn't some kind of sentient force, right? In order to in order for a hashtag to spread, you actually have to find a group large enough to do the spreading, right? Again, this really feels more like you want to pretend your opposition doesn't exist by assuming they all must be invalid in some way. Well, unfortunately for you, again, just because someone is blocked from your point of reference doesn't mean they're blocked from all existence. I.e., no matter how much you insist the people who dislike Last Jedi must be invalid, that doesn't mean they don't have the power to impact Last Jedi. So if a small dedicated core of people spread a hashtag and large amounts of their audience and people who aren't even in their audience but still agree with the sentiment spread that hashtag around, thereby formulating a effective boycott, then that doesn't mean that no one disagrees with you. That in fact means there's enough people on the ground that agree with this sentiment to make the hashtag worthwhile. The hashtag wouldn't work if no one ever agreed with it or couldn't be convinced to be. You could make an argument about how these people are using invalid means to convince people. I'd probably still disagree with you, depending on what you claimed the invalid part of that was, but you could make the argument that these people are manipulated into thinking this way, but you're not making that argument. You're just making the argument that somehow these people are able to spread a hashtag without actually having support, which is so nonsensical a 2-year-old could fucking figure it out. A child old enough to understand that the person who they see doesn't disappear when they're playing peekaboo could explain to you how that makes no fucking sense. But you're actually doing it in a incomprehensibly long article. Moving on.
Right. Okay. For example, a hashtag going around Twitter after the release of The Last Jedi was the hashtag Last Jedi Awful. It was used to express negative emotions about the film. The tag is featured in one of the top tweets mentioning Last Jedi between 2017 and December 2017 and November 2018. And here it is. Hashtag Last Jedi Awful. Hashtag Last Jedi. Irritant of the day. Let's make the entire plot of episode 7 irrelevant by tossing lightsaber over Luke's shoulder. That'll show him I'm bravely going in a new direction of the series. Puke.
Yeah, because that's what he did do. And the reason that hashtag caught on is because large sums of people on the ground agreed with it. Like, do you understand how social media actually works, or don't you? You can, if you have enough clout and influence, maybe astroturf a campaign or two, but it still won't catch on anything like this one has. But the thing is, on the ground, this campaign actually has support, even if it was started by invalid actors or some bullshit. But as it happens, it wasn't. This is just an organic reaction to the fact that Last Jedi was indeed quite awful for roughly the reasons outlined in that tweet, i.e., Rian Johnson felt it was more important to instrumentalize um, Star Wars as a means of subversion than he felt it was important to actually provide a meaningful contribution to the Star Wars franchise, its lore, or its characters. And that is what Star Wars fans objected to, generally speaking. Moving on. And also, hi, Chrono.
Yeah, lack something. It's a very expensive meh. Right. Okay. Probably after this, we are going to call it for this article.
Mm-hmm.
However, the tag itself was not popular. As of as of February 2021, there are only 6,435 mentions of the hashtag Last Jedi tag, Last Jedi awful tag by only 736 accounts. 84% of the top 25 accounts by most tweets tweeted with the hashtag are associated with the alt-right. All top users tweeted the hashtag over 50 times. User Vexer 4000 tweeted the hashtag over 900 times.
And yet, Last Jedi still managed to make less than $1 billion, or actually more than $1 million less than the first one did. You're acting as though this can't in any way be meaningfully traced onto the actual on the ground numbers, which it very, very evidently can. And even if it is a small amount of people repeatedly saying the thing, if that sentiment is organic and popular enough, it will have a real world impact. Like, say, the box office. You know, that thing those inarguable numbers that actually exist and are a reflection of people's sentiment. Also, once again, you have absolutely no conception of what the term alt-right means. There are maybe 3 meaningful contributors to the actual honest to goodness alt-right, and they are all, to a man, childish jokes. Like, on the level of a Dr. Doofenshmirtz, a Dr. Draken, a Dr. Evil, or a Jack freaking Spicer from Shaolin Showdown. Moving on.
Right. Well, like I said, we are going to call it there for that. And we are going to cover some trailers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually the one who sent these to Dalton to cover. So the first one is going to be, ironically enough, something somewhat related to the article we just read, which is the Obi-Wan Kenobi trailer.
And just for the record, I haven't seen this, so my reactions will be off the cuff.
I honestly don't remember because I don't remember really much of it. So we're both going in here kind of blind. So.
Yep.
Banana.
There's got to be some obscure Star Wars fruit we could use. God damn it.
Well, I'll tell you that. Well, I mean, it is Mother's Day today, so we could make that something. Also,
I mean,
I totally forgot to mention this earlier. To everyone out there, I hope you guys had a wonderful Mother's Day with your mothers. You know.
Mm-hmm. And for those of you that are old enough that your mother is no longer with us, I hope you spent the day remembering her at least.
So, shall we? Oh God, I'm gonna hate myself for this, but it's somewhat appropriate for today. Oh, God.
Go on.
Shall we MILF Nana? That sounds so fucking wrong.
No, and boot to the head for you, sir.
I'm sorry. It was there.
We shall never be doing that ever again. We will never be speaking of this again. And if we do, I swear to God, I will kill you.
Okay. So just banana then.
Just banana.
Okay.
Thank God.
Sick. All right. Banana.
Stay hidden, or we will not survive.
Oh, hey, Dragon Charm. You're
You're
cool.
good.
Yeah.
We're moving through things fairly quickly today
Yeah.
for some reason. But I don't have anything on this one.
I kind of do.
Okay.
It does kind of retain to a lot more kind of overall of the Star Wars shows lately from Disney.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna sound weird. I don't get me wrong. I like the Dark Ages, like the 20 years set between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very interested in that time, but that's all we're stuck in here, really.
Yeah, because it's not like we can do anything post the Disney trilogy because nobody likes the freaking Disney trilogy.
Right. And quite frankly, I don't know. It just this doesn't really feel like a story that needs to be told, man, because I don't really think there was much that happened with Obi-Wan during the
Like if this needed to be told, I would have preferred it be told in animated form because then Dave Filoni could be doing his Clone Wars thing with it.
yeah.
Especially because in Rebels there was a scene. I think it was in Rebels. It might have been in season 7 of Clone Wars. There was a scene where Ben confronts Darth
Well,
Maul.
that's Rebels.
Yeah. So
Right.
like the most relevant part of this story has already been told. I mean, I guess we can see him master the Force Ghost technique because, as Yoda said, in Revenge of the Sith, in your exile training I have for you.
It unfortunately doesn't seem like that because they're bringing in the Inquisitors.
Yeah, see, a series centered around Kenobi trying to master the Force Ghost technique, where we could see like the wills maybe, and the netherworld of the Force, where he has to go to confront its dark side, like Yoda did in Clone Wars. That would be freaking interesting.
Right.
Or maybe he gets to see Qui-Gon again, and you could get
Liam Neeson.
Liam Neeson back for a bit,
Mm.
and they could have closure. This would be a very interesting way to deal with this, or like show him watching over young Luke
They do actually.
from afar and whatnot, like
We probably should.
banana.
Yeah.
Leave it this long. When the time comes, he must be trained. Like you trained his father.
Oof.
You still want Kenobi. He's gone.
I think Owen just burned him worse than a lightsaber just then. Well done, Uncle Owen there.
Right.
Damn.
I mean, it looks cool and all. It's just, I don't know. It feels weird. Like, it feels like it's too action packed for Kenobi after everything that happened.
Like again, I don't mind the idea that he was also doing things in between point A and point B, but it has to be things that make sense.
Right.
Like Maul coming to find him made sense, or him mastering the Force Ghost technique by finding his way to the Wills, as per Yoda's instructions, and meeting Qui-Gon and dealing with his personal baggage from that. That
Right.
would also make sense. Or
Okay.
just dealing with the failure that, the sense of failure of like, I doomed the galaxy by letting him live,
Right. Okay.
this
So,
would all make sense.
right.
Yeah.
Dragon Turtle. Maybe Qui-Gon Jinn leading Obi-Wan on a sort of spirit quest, with him traveling across the galaxy, doing Dagobah cave-style visions, fighting holocrons, etc. But he probably needs to stay on Tatooine for Luke, because it does show like Luke is like, I don't know, maybe 5 or so, like kind of young.
Yeah, no, he doesn't need to. He doesn't need to leave the planet because he can just go to the netherworld of the Force while he's meditating, like Yoda did with Qui-Gon in um, Clone Wars. Um, but that would, but he can still do things in exile. I have no problem with him doing things during exile, or show him doing like subtle things to help young Luke kind of keep in touch with his powers and so on. Like and again, deal with the emotional baggage of I doomed. It's like the Batman Joker thing. How many people have I killed by letting him live?
Right.
Because you can't tell me he can't. You can't tell me he doesn't learn what Vader does on Tatooine and goes, you do realize all of this is my fault because I let him live, instead of being willing to put the final headshot of the lightsaber in him or anything.
Dragon Turtle. Does he know Anakin is Darth Vader yet? It might
Yes,
be for him to find out part way through.
yes, he knows. He knows that Anakin's Sith name was Darth Vader back in Episode 3. So yes,
Right.
and he also knows Anakin was burnt to shit, and he knows what the medical suits look like. So I would imagine he would just assume, oh, and he got himself a medical suit. That
Right.
makes sense.
I think the thing that kind of throws me off is the Inquisitors here. The Sith Inquisitors, or kind of Sith Inquisitors.
Like, I don't hate the Sith Inquisitors, but most of the love I have from the Sith Inquisitors comes from shit from the expanded universe that is no longer canon.
Right. My problem is just them being here, searching for Obi-Wan and stuff. It's, I don't know.
It doesn't make sense. The whole reason why Obi-Wan hides on Tatooine and Yoda hides on Dagobah is because those are hard to get to outskirt planets that nobody would think to look for them in. That's specifically why they chose the places they chose. And that's also why they chose to put the twins where they put the twins. And honestly, if Senator Organa hadn't said the thing about my wife and I have always wanted to adopt a daughter, she probably would have been hidden with Yoda on Dagobah. And in fact, if we're in the business of doing alternate universes, I want a universe where Leia is trained by Yoda all those years.
Mm.
Because that would be a Jedi Mary Sue female character that I could actually get behind. Leia raised by Yoda.
Right.
Yes.
All right, so Giant Troll, it is worse for Obi-Wan because he didn't have the strength to kill the apprentice, so he hoped that fire would do it, and he didn't have to look at him. At least Batman has a good reason to not kill. Also, Chrononaut, Slifer. Does he know Ray Palpatine is the bestest ever after America Chavez, of course?
Okay. Okay. Complete sidebar, but I will say this. I know it's going to be a controversial thing that I'm going to say, but I'm going to have to give Marvel props on this one because they fixed America Chavez. They sanded off all her rough edges, and there isn't a Rey-style Mary Sue moment or a contemptuous Captain Marvel-esque moment of, like, crushing a dude's hand because of patriarchy. She's a tough, street-smart kid who has had a hard life and therefore is kind of cocky, as per all the MCU characters, but she's not insufferable in any way. She's not. They de-woked her in
Multiverse of Madness.
in Multiverse of Madness as much as they could while still staying true to the character. She doesn't speak Spanglish. She isn't confrontational. They fixed America Chavez, and I'm fine with her MCU version.
Right. All right, but I haven't seen Multiverse of Madness. We're gonna cover it next week, so keep that in mind, guys. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know how to feel about this, like, Obi-Wan thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
the thing that annoys me is, like, even just with us sitting here, we've come up with better ideas than the people who made this seem to have, which happens quite fairly regularly. But it still annoys me that two schlubs on the internet just shooting the shit on a Sunday can actually, with no great degree of ego, spend 5 minutes talking about an idea and come up with something better than what the incredibly highly paid writers at Disney can do, apparently.
okay. Banana.
Banana.
Maybe you've been looking in the wrong places. I want every lowlife and bounty hunter to squeeze in.
I mean, it looks cool and all. Like, I'm not like these shows always look good. It's just,
I mean, the visual effects are always. I mean, Disney is throwing fuck off money at this, so yeah,
like,
it's gonna look good.
again. I guess my issue is, I should be excited, you know. I should be, but I'm more just asking, why is this a thing? Like, does this
Yeah.
need to be told? Like, this story?
Yeah. What ideas came to you in relation to Obi-Wan's backstory that you went, that could be a show? Because you could literally make this Star Wars answer to Moon Knight and have him go to the netherworld of the Force, and we could see a quote unquote live action, obviously CG generated, but live action style with wills of the Nexus of the Force, and it would be good, and we could see Obi-Wan fighting Dark Mirror Obi-Wan like we saw Master Yoda fighting his Dark Mirror self in that one episode of Clone Wars. And these are obvious things that you could have happen if you knew the characters. And my problem is, it doesn't feel like these people know the characters. They just want there to be an Obi-Wan story because Obi-Wan's story will get the audience on board, maybe.
Mm.
Yeah, okay, but what mechanism that serves Obi-Wan are you doing this for? Because I could easily see them try to do a social justicely inclined Obi-Wan show, but that wouldn't be good either, even though that would be an idea technically. My question is, how does this serve to elaborate the world building of the Star Wars universe or elaborate Obi-Wan's character arc, given that there's a lot of things they could do with his character arc, like the training, the oh god, how many people have I killed by letting Anakin live, so on and so on and so forth. There's a lot of interesting character things that can be and should be going on here, and that just don't appear to be going on here for some reason.
Dragon Troll, honestly, I really hate that they made her Rey Palpatine, and it's the obvious way to do it. They'll kid her there to avoid the reputation and have her tempted with the dark side the whole time.
Okay, I don't mind that they made her Rey Palpatine. In fact, that was something I called even before Last Jedi. I called that she was descended from Palpatine. Because what I thought, and my thought process was, let's have an interesting duality thing whereby the grandson of Skywalker falls to the dark side, and the granddaughter of Palpatine ends up being drawn to the light side and redeeming her family legacy. But instead of redeeming her family legacy, she's just a bland Mary Sue nothing character who shuns her family legacy and co-opts the Skywalker name.
Right. Okay. I've actually had ideas, and I honestly should probably write them down and like make a PDF out of it at some point. But I've years ago I had ideas on how to do the sequel trilogy, and I'll like briefly go over them after like we kind of get done with this article. I mean, trailer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
To like throw them out there. Right, but yeah, okay.
Banana.
Banana.
You can't win, Obi-Wan! You can't escape him!
Okay, so question. If Anakin, aka Vader, knows that Obi-Wan is on Tatooine, as is implied by that very familiar vocal sound there, the fuck, just the whole thing, the fuck.
Yeah, it's weird. See, this is also a thing. Like it, not only doesn't really have a story that I think works for Obi-Wan. I think it's also messing with like the canon as well. Like
it opens up so many questions of why in all the fuck is Vader even on Tatooine, because he actually made a point, at least in the original goddamn canon, that he was never fucking going back there. Like, that was his number one reason for shunning his Anakin identity, was because he hated everything to do with that annoying little kid on Tatooine whose mother was a slave to Watto. Like, he hates his childhood, and so he actively avoids going to Tatooine unless he absolutely has to. That's why it was smart for Obi-Wan to hide him there. Apart from just being thematically appropriate because, the sins of the father and everything.
Right.
Like, but in universe, this is why I hate the modern day focus on my implications and my themes, my meta considerations, because good storytelling allows the themes to exist and the in-universe logic to be served by the same actions. That is what we call good storytelling. When the themes and the storytelling, the in-universe logic, line up and make sense, i.e., it makes sense from a thematic standpoint for Obi-Wan to take him to Tatooine because, redeeming the sins of the father and so on and so forth, and you will live like your father did so you can redeem your father in the same way. And it makes sense from an in-universe logic because Anakin, aka Vader, does not want to be there. So that would be the last place he will think to look.
Right, Joel. Even if Vader thought he left, why wouldn't he get suspicious in A New Hope, where the plans disappeared there?
Yeah, it's just Rage. And it also cuts down on the dramatic weight of New Hope, because when Vader first senses Obi-Wan, he goes, "I sense something, a presence that I've not felt since," and then he freaks out and runs in the other direction because he knows who it is, and he can feel Obi-Wan there and knows it's time to finally settle up. It undercuts Vader's arc as well as Obi-Wan's if Vader A is even willing to set foot on Tatooine, which he shouldn't be, or B knows that Obi-Wan at the very least is there, let alone his son, who knowing how Disney fucks up the writing, he's probably gonna know about Luke before the end of the series, isn't he? And it's gonna be some lazy, contrived mind wipe thing. I'm gonna hate it. It's not just it has no reason to exist, it's actually counterproductive now. As badass as hearing Vader's breath pump noise is, and the implication of Vader fighting Obi-Wan again, it ruins everything else about the canon that could conceivably be ruined. It's not worth it. It's not worth it to see Vader and Obi-Wan fight again to ruin both characters' character arcs, Luke's character arc, and the entire goddamn point of the franchise. Moving on.
Right. Right. Yeah, I was gonna kind of briefly pitch what I would have done with the sequel trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. So kind of context, right? I kind of started from scratch on my sequel trilogy ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Relatively, there were some things that I kept from like the extended universe, and like things that involve the main cast directly, like the Thrawn trilogy and the Yuuzhan Vong invasion. That stuff happened in the 30 years between those. And it followed Luke's daughter. I realized in the original extended universe, he had a son who was Ben Skywalker, I believe. And also, full disclosure, I'm relatively young, and I'm still, even to this day, I'm still trying to learn more about Star Wars and stuff, and go through things such as the extended universe. And so my knowledge isn't as great as it probably could be. So I'm kind of more just going off top of my head here, what I can remember vaguely from things I've researched. So, but yeah, I changed it to a daughter because if we had to have a female main character, it just made sense to have it be Luke's daughter. Plus, there was interesting ideas I had that could have played with that as well. That honestly could have been the same with a male lead as well. But modern climate as it is, play the ball.
If we must play the game, we could at least play it in a way that doesn't suck.
Yeah. And obviously, I'm sure if anyone here is a fan of the extended universe, knows that the daughter is both the daughter of Luke Skywalker and Mara Jade. Just mainly, I do kind of want to talk about the primary antagonistic force, which is not it's not Darkseid or a Sith or anything. It was actually, it's kind of like one of those ideas that I'm really proud of, and I wish I could use in another form of fiction I could write. But I think it works perfectly in Star Wars, which is this thing I call the Red Salvation, where it's basically like these group of people that are like these kind of zealots that believe all Force wielders and kind of believe the Force itself is somewhat a malevolent entity and those who wield it, because a lot of wars and a lot of things that have happened because of people manipulating the Force or Force users, Jedi, Sith, yada
Well,
yada.
and this was even set up in the sense that even in New Hope we see one of Vader's generals there refute refer to the Force as sorcery, and Han Solo refers to it as um hokey religions and ancient weapons. So like there is a faction of the Star Wars universe, at least post Fall of the Republic, that views the Force literally as witchcraft.
Right. And I guess I was kind of taking that into a more extreme version where basically they were effectively witch hunters and would target anyone that is a Force user, be it Jedi or Sith or someone who is in tune with the Force, as they saw it as all evil. Because, again, like, well, not evil, but something.
Which to be fair, if they went to Dathomir, then they were probably right because
Right.
all the Force users on that planet literally are witches. But unfortunately, most of the Dathomirans are already dead by the time of this point.
Right. All right. See ya, Dragon Turtle. But yeah, I guess they were theoretically they were meant to be kind of the representative of the common people that constantly get caught up in this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The battle between the light and dark side of the Force.
Mm-hmm.
And like just kind of general events that were happening in the movie. I won't lie, first movie somewhat uneventful, and it's actually it's the weird thing where like the heroes don't win in the end. Like the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of that inverse of like how the original trilogy happened.
Mm-hmm.
The second movie was again kind of supposed to be a somewhat Empire Strikes Back deal, yada yada. Where the kind of major conflict was more so the fight for Mandalore, where I had like this other main character who was a Mandalorian, and that kind of the idea was that it was supposed to kind of tie into the Mandalorian show, where we saw the clan that was formed in the Mandalorian show be a primary factor here. Kind of see how that happens there.
Mm-hmm.
And the daughter of Luke Skywalker, who I believe I called Mira, Mira Skywalker, was supposed to go on a spiritual journey. Unlike her father, she was not to leave, thus, because she already failed previously. And I believe I went over this whole thing like when we talked about Rise of Skywalker like 2 years ago.
You did.
Yeah. But yeah, and like kind of fast forwarding to the third movie, which ironically would have been the name Duel of Fates from the defunct movie script that was cut out.
Mm-hmm.
That actually looked really cool from all the concept art I had seen of that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Where basically the final battle between her and like the main guy of the Red Salvation, who had become a Force user and exiled and stuff from the Red Salvation because he'd started tapping into the Force.
Mm-hmm.
They fought on Tatooine, which was kind of supposed to be the end of everything. Like there was a giant space battle over Tatooine, and again, it was personal battle there and stuff. So, it's
Mm-hmm.
it would have been a sequel trilogy built on nostalgia in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I've never actually like written this down, so I was just kind of picking out certain things that have always stuck in my head with how I would have done it.
Hmm.
So yeah. Anyway, shall we move on to the last thing?
Yeah, last trailer.
Okay. So this is Green Lantern Beware My Power trailer. It's part of the new like series of movies that they're doing in the same universe.
Mm.
I haven't seen them, unfortunately. I've seen the trailers for them, and I think they look cool. I just haven't gotten them. I think they're on DVD releases, which I feel I kind of wish they weren't. I wish they had like a theatrical release or something. But that it's whatever. I'm not. Anyway, shall we?
Yeah.
No.
But which are yellow, therefore he should be shitting himself right now. Lol.
Hey, intruder!
Whoa, whoa, whoa!
Oops. I don't know why I was so. It's 480. It's weird. I mean, I like the look of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like the
The
animation.
animation style is really good.
Yeah. It's actually like very comic booky. I remember someone saying once, like this was actually once the Superman movie came out, which is kind of like the start of this.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it kind of reminded him of Archer in a way, like the character designs and stuff.
Yeah, kind of.
Like, I think it's the bold lines for the outlines of the characters.
Mm-hmm. I think it works though.
Yeah.
Recently they've been doing stuff with like the same shapes but softer lines, and it hasn't looked quite right. So
Yeah. Honestly, I think it works. That was a lot more colorful. Like I don't know why, and like this is a weird thing. Like these movies seem to have more pop to them than like the
yeah,
new DC
yeah.
movie.
It's the first time in a while that it's actually popped like that, like since the end of the DC animated universe.
Yeah. Banana?
But
Too.
Look,
Who are you? How did you get a ring? My name is John Stewart, and if I told you, you wouldn't believe me. What the hell? At last, I found you.
It's very interesting. I will say Jon Stewart's voice is a bit generic for me.
yeah, who voices him?
Let me look it up real quick. Like nothing against the voice actor, and like it's not wooden or anything. It's just it feels like I've
No,
heard.
it's a good voice. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just again I've grown up with like Phil Lamar voicing, so I kind of always expect Jon Stewart to have like a deeper voice.
Well, it's like me and Oded Freyr as Dr. Fate. Every time someone who isn't Oded Freyr plays Dr. Fate, I'm like, you're okay, but you're no Oded Freyr. And Naboo willing, at some point in the future, Oded Freyr will go back and voice Dr. Fate in that one Superman the Animated Series episode, because the guy they got to voice Kent in that just sounded nothing like Dr. Fate to me. And I'm saying that even before I watched the Oded Freyr one, so it's not not just a bias towards Oded Freyr. It's just he doesn't sound in any way like grandiose or mystical, and that is the number one thing that both Dr. Fate and Dr. Strange should have in common, is they talk like ancient mystical scholars, because they are ancient mystical scholars. Moving on, though.
I'm looking up the voice actor for Jon Stewart. Oh, holy shit. It's Aldous Hodge.
Where do I know him from?
He's playing Hawkman in Black Adam.
That should be fun.
I find it really funny that he's also playing Green Lantern here.
Multiverse.
Yeah. Well, again, like his voice isn't bad. Like, it's just, again, to me, Jon Stewart's always sounded more deeper voiced. You know.
You always remember your first iteration of characters.
Yeah. So I
still am mad at Benedict Cumberbatch for not being John Vernon because of that one episode of Spider-Man the Animated Series with Doctor Strange in it.
Yeah, like Josh Keaton as Spider-Man, always.
He was spectacular, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyway, actually, the funny thing is, he actually looks like Spider-Man.
All of the Spider-Man actors do for some reason. Like all of the voice actors they've gotten to play Spider-Man in some way look like Spider-Man. Although, to be fair, in Drake Bell's case, that's because they based his character design on Drake Bell. But
I thought they did the Ultimate Spider-Man design.
They may have. No, I'm talking about the way Peter looks when he's out of the suit. He looks like Drake Bell. They based his animation on Drake Bell.
Huh.
Which to me will always be funny because Drake Bell will always be Drake from Drake and Josh to me. So Spider-Man sounds like Drake from Drake and Josh to me.
Oh yeah, same here.
Which is funny.
Anyway,
Banana.
Well, I do want to say I'm also like interested because it shows that they're instead of like an alien or anything, it was a guardian, like a guardian of Oa that was handing him over and died.
Dang.
Yeah.
Guess their immortality must have been on the fritz that day.
Well, they turned to charred ash, so.
Yeah, whoever was chasing them must be quite threatening. Anyway, Banana.
Banana.
Jon Stewart of Earth.
What?
You possess singular will. Welcome to the Green Lantern Corps.
After years of bloody war, the Owen security net was disabled. Hal Jordan and millions of Thanagarians died that day. They will pay.
Well, she's fun.
Oh, Sinestro. The Thanagarians are in this. That gets even more hilarious in a better sense.
Yeah. Also, yeah, Sinestro and the Hawkwoman. Like, it is, like, I love it because it was, like, I love how they're incorporating so many different characters without, like, doing, it's always a thing that I've wanted more of in terms of, like, the live action superhero show movies and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, like, the question of, like, oh, why don't, like, some of these the Avengers come in during, like, events like Iron Man 3 or like it doesn't have to it doesn't have to be like the whole team, maybe like a member, just see how they react in this kind of situation and stuff. Like, like I kind of understand it from like point of like business and stuff. Totally get that. Just logically.
I mean, it makes less sense in the earlier ones because basically everyone is street level. With Multiverse of Madness, I'm not sitting there thinking why doesn't Ant-Man show up, because it's
right. Yeah,
to quote Uncle from Jackie Chan Adventures, magic must defeat magic.
Right. Well, obviously, I meant in like earlier versions or scenarios that make sense for others.
Yeah, like that was one of the big problems with Ragnarok, and they explained it and it's fine and everything, and I like the reference to Planet Hulk and everything, but why is Hulk there in a Thor movie, really?
I wish we got more Hulk movies, but whatever.
We can't because Universal still owns the rights to Hulk. They can throw him in team up movies, but they can't make a Hulk solo movie because Universal will throw shit at them.
Why don't they?
Which
why
you,
can't
you
they?
would, yeah, you would think that Disney has enough money at this point that they could just go, our last movie made $1 billion, so you can fuck off. But apparently not. I think on Universal's part, it's just a point of pride at this point, like, or they're waiting for Disney to break down and just do a sweetheart deal like they did with Sony for use of Tom Holland Spider-Man.
Why do I feel like I'm gonna have to pitch a MCU Hulk trilogy now? God damn it!
Because they still haven't addressed anything having to do with the Abomination other than having him show up randomly in Shang-Chi.
Or just the character arc of Hulk.
Or the leader. Or any of
Anyway.
the other Hulk villains.
Anyway,
moving on.
Yeah. Banana?
Mm-hmm. Banana.
Lives of chaos and death.
Get ready for a fight. Annihilate them. I've been up against that kind of barrier my whole life. It hasn't stopped me yet.
This is really cool. I don't really know how else to say it.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on.
Mm-hmm. Banana.
Coordinates set.
Let's go.
I will say this, and it's always striking me that when they do animated Green Lantern movies, they never really seem to miss. Like First Flight, Emerald Knights, I've watched those, and they're really good. Especially because Nathan Fillion is voicing Hal Jordan.
The fan casting we've all wanted for so many years.
Dude, he would be so fucking awesome. Like, we've kind of seen it in Firefly and Castle.
I mean, he's getting a little bit up there in years now, so the time for him to play him would be
fair enough.
soon.
Fair enough. Like 2010. Like if
you swapped out Ryan Reynolds for Nathan Fillion, I think that movie would have done better either way. But
actually, I saw a video recently where someone pitched a fan casting of Jensen Ackles playing Hal Jordan.
No, Jensen Ackles, Kyle Rayner would make more sense.
Honestly, to be fair, I've never really. The only Hal Jordan I've seen is from the Green Lantern animated series.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have to read more. I would have to search more about Hal Jordan as a character to really pick someone. If honestly, maybe someone unknown. Yeah. Anyway, interested to see where this movie goes. And with that, folks, I want to say goodbye, adios, aloha, avideze, sayonara, peace, cheers, and
fuck off.